Friend Street and Cedar Heights.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to a regular Oak Harbor City Council workshop. Today is May 22nd. It is 5 p.m. I'd like to call that meeting to order. I'd like to tell you that I've received about 4 different texts now, one from Councilor Wassinger, one from Nikki Esparza, one from Mayor Pro Tem, and they're down on Scenic Heights Road, and apparently there's been an accident between here and Scenic Heights somewhere, so they're all stuck in traffic, but on their way to this meeting. I think that includes Rick Almberg and potentially Joel Servadius. So we'll have more members coming before long. I think we'll have a quorum at that point. One more and we'll have a quorum here, but we can't take care of our actual action item at this time. We could start with something else on the agenda, but it can't be legal department since Nikki's in that traffic.
We can start with the transit report.
So why don't we do that at this time? I know Todd's here. Welcome, Todd. And
Go to the audience and come back.
I guess let's also, for those that are here, let's go around the table and introduce ourselves, those that are here. I'm Bob Severns, Oak Harbor Mayor.
Tara Heisen, City Council.
Bill Larson, City Council.
Jim Wiesner, City Council.
Blaine Oborn, City Administrator.
I'm Todd Morrow from Island Transit.
And welcome, Todd. We'll start, if you don't mind, at this point with our community partner presentation that was set for 5:20. And then I know that you were at a meeting earlier today that I was in attendance at, and Mayor Pro Tem Munns was there with you. She's a board member, so
Yeah.
I would assume she'll come and want to kind of join you here. So
Perfect.
welcome, Todd.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening, basically to give you a short update on all things Island Transit. And first of all, I really want to say how much we do appreciate Councilmember Munns for the work that she does representing you all, the council and the city, on the Island Transit Board. She spends a good deal of time on our issues, also represents us at the Island Regional Transportation Planning Organization, the meeting that the mayor just referenced as well. And I also want to thank the mayor for his time that he spent welcoming me to Oak Harbor and helping to establish a good working relationship. And we're meeting regularly now, which I really appreciate. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the mission of Island Transit is to provide safe, accessible, convenient, and friendly public transportation services which enhance our island quality of life. And I'm going to go through these slides in just a minute, but we're not quite there yet, so that's why I'm not clicking. Don't worry about what's going on the screen. I see all these looks up there, but thank you. So at Island Transit, we do this through scheduled bus routes throughout Island County. We provide paratransit services as well, and have a large van pool program that you probably see with 49 active van pool vans. We provide good connections to all 4 gateways here in Island County, which of course includes Highway 532 over on Camano Island, but also Deception Pass and the 2 ferries. And we do this Monday through Saturday. Countywide, we have 15 bus routes, 5 of which are based on our sister island of Camano Island. And we have 1 route, of course, from here to the Anacortes area that connects our folks to Skagit Transit. For us at Island Transit, it's all about protecting our quality of life by providing transit options that help reduce the growth in single occupant vehicle use. And it's also about helping our economy to grow by providing transit that gets people to their jobs, to school, shopping, the ferries, and supports tourism. Of course, Oak Harbor is the center of our Island Transit universe. Our bus network it originates out of here. We have 4 local routes and 3 commuter routes that are based out of Harbor Station. Our service begins at 4:15 in the morning and ends, depending on what route you're on, around 8 o'clock in the night. And system-wide, last year we carried more than 800,000 passenger trips, with 59,000 of those being for paratransit purposes. On an average weekday, so just take one day, we carry about 2,079 passenger trips across our system. And to give you some perspective about what that means here in Oak Harbor, the ridership for Oak Harbor, meaning the people that get on the bus here in Oak Harbor on an average weekday, it's 608 folks that do that, or 608 boardings inside the Oak Harbor city limits. And on an average Saturday, it's 133 boardings on our system here in Oak Harbor. Our annual operating budget's about $15 million. We're characterized as a rural transit system. And 71% of our operating revenue comes from sales tax. The rest from federal and state grants. When you purchase something here in Island County that's taxable, 9 pennies on a $10 purchase supports transit service here. So we're highly dependent on how the economy is doing here. We have no revenue from fares, as you know. We have 122 employees, and 19 of those are based on Camano Island, where we have a small operating base for our service that's there. Okay, so what lies ahead? The good news is Island Transit is in a good place now financially. We've had really great senior management team. These are people that were in place before I came in December, and also a board that's really done a good job helping our agency through tough times. And if Councilmember Almberg was here, I'd want to thank him for his leadership during those times, because he was part of the solution to the challenges that Island Transit had. I'm excited personally to be part of an agency and also part of a community that understands the value of transit and how we, Island Transit, can contribute to our way of life here on Whidbey Island and also help our economy. Although I'm a lawyer by background, I've spent nearly 19 years in transit. My job has been to position the bus agencies where I've been working to be able to do more. Most recently, I was at Intercity Transit in Olympia, but before that, I was at Community Transit in Snohomish County. And because of the work we did there, we were able to increase the revenue for those agencies, and they are now actually expanding their service. My hope for our community is to also improve and expand the service that we have here as well. So this coming Tuesday, we are implementing our first ever service onto the Naval Air Station. That's what I want to share just a little snapshot with you about. This is really a big deal for us to be going onto the Naval Air Station. And this will provide a much needed option for base personnel to get to work here from Oak Harbor. And it's really a great partnership between Island Transit and the leadership at Naval Air Station Whidbey. We at Island Transit are grateful for the extra effort that the commanding officer, Matt Arney, put into this service, as well as my predecessor, Mike Nortier, at Island Transit. So this service will be only for those customers who have proper military credentials and are working on the base. And we've worked with the county to get a side road to the Charles Porter Gate, actually dedicated to transit and HOVs, meaning carpools. Hello. So that our bus will actually have expedited entry onto the base in the morning. As most of you know, there's a lot of congestion and there's backup there. And if our service is to be successful, the people on the bus need to have some sort of advantage to get into the base. So we're really excited about this. Here you can see the route on the left that is for the new service. You can see that it connects Harbor Station and the Navy housing neighborhoods here in Oak Harbor with the flight line and other important places on the base. And then these next couple series of slides, these are the new bus stops that we have. These are the ones from the base, and there's more as well. These are just to give you an idea. And then we also have some from the Navy housing neighborhoods as well. And this is one of the vehicles that will actually be providing the service. So we're excited about this new service. It starts on Tuesday. And we also, one of the things that we're doing has been to expand our service on Saturdays, and I actually handed you all in your stack of materials, there's a sheet that has information about the improvements to our service on Saturdays and also just in general as well. So one of the exciting things that we're doing right now, and we're done looking at the slides, but you can keep looking at the exciting bus, thank you for that, is we're working on developing a long-range planning process. Our goal is really, as a transit agency, is to do outreach and engagement with our community, and including community leaders like you, and the public and our riders, and really to determine what it is that we should do next. What would be best for Oak Harbor, best for Whidbey Island and Camano Island. And this would really be an unconstrained look, and after that we'd figure out how are we going to pay for these and how are we going to prioritize these. So just to kind of whet your appetite, again, this is coming down the pike. Nothing's been decided, but I just want to give you some thoughts about some things that have been talked about in terms of improvements. One of them, of course, is to have service on Sundays. As you know, we don't currently have service on Sundays. Another one would be to electrify our bus fleet over time. There's a big push for that. As a city, you know about the requirements for your vehicles to electrify, and that's also something that's coming down the pike in the bus world as well. Another area that we've heard a lot about is having some sort of seasonal service from Coopville to Eby's Landing for all the tourists, and the fact that there's not a lot of parking in the summer for folks like that. A transit center in the south is another thing we don't have. We don't have anything like Oak Harbor Station in the south, and so that makes it really hard to coordinate the connections. And workforce transit service, kind of expanding on this idea of what we're doing at the Naval Air Station, but possibly looking at partnering with Skagit Transit to make it easier for people who are commuting on island every day to get to whether it's the Naval Air Station or to some of our education centers that we have, and vice versa. People are leaving the island in the north as well, so that might be something we'll look at. And then finally, one of the really important ones is looking at improving our operations here in Oak Harbor in terms of potentially finding a new location for an expanded transit center that actually would have some parking as well. And then I should say one more, which is better customer amenities. A lot of people would like to have real-time information at places like Harbor Station that actually lets them know when the bus is coming. Right now you can do that on your phone, but it'd be easy for folks that don't have access to a phone to be able to look at a sign. So just want to say I'm really excited to be here. I enjoy the opportunity to be with all of you, engaging with you, and you are our leaders. And I really want to say thank you. Thank you again for sending us Councilmember Munns. Thank you for supporting the work of Island Transit. And just please remember, we're partners with you, just as I work with the mayor, and we really want to be a good collaborator with you. So we're here to work with you. And if there's time, I'd love to answer any questions, or if you have any ideas to share with me, I'd enjoy receiving those as well. So leave it to the mayor to decide. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morrow. Since he did pay our Mayor Pro Tem a very nice compliment, I wanted to pass that along and say thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for your involvement there. And also, we now had our Councilor Wassinger and Councilor Servadius get out of the backup of traffic and welcome you to the meeting today. Anybody have any questions regarding Island Transit or from Mr. Morrow at this time? Gosh, okay. Nice job.
Hey,
Nice
great.
job. We'll see you again soon.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I saw 3 buses come down Harbor. It was,
Yeah, crazy.
yeah, crazy.
Anybody else need a packet?
Okay, so we will now go back to the beginning of our meeting and our agenda, our action item, Windjammer Splash Park Naming Contest finalists. Are you, Mr. Osborne, handling this?
Yeah, I'm ready to start, and we've got a lot of people here for support, so.
Great.
I was gonna do a line, we're gonna start with the splash, but it doesn't work because we didn't quite start with the splash with the accidents. It kind of messed things up. So just to kind of give you an introduction here, you're kind of familiar with the support staff here with the different committees represented. I have at the table with me Kate Venezuela, and then we have Teresa Kingsbury in the audience, Mike Wright in the audience, Hal Hovey in the audience, and Tara's here at the table because she's on the council. And then I really thank the staff that helped us through the process. A lot of support from Brett Arvidsson and from Lisa Felix in supporting this initiative here. It's been a pretty quick timeline, a good contest here, and certainly we thank Enviro Issues for helping us through this logistics of doing this process. So yeah, the people on the committee had 2 meetings. One was kind of an introductory, and one was where we kind of made the decision. The committee received 37 valid name entries, and one of the things that we kind of drew up was criteria. So we looked at our Oak Harbor's heritage, living in Oak Harbor, local environment, and originality and creativity. So these were what we were looking for in the name. So, and certainly I mentioned that Enviro Issues kind of screened us and helped us through the process here. So drum roll, please. The name picked was Shipwreck Shores. So the committee rated this highly due to the quality. It just really fit in really well. The essay that they had fit in really well, demonstrated a real need. It met all the requirements. And incidentally, when we went to do the second and the 5th place, they were all kind of a distant second, and they were almost tied. So this one just stood out. Everybody was in all the 5 committee members' top 5. They did modify the name a little bit. So from exactly what was submitted. And
Shipwreck Shores splash
yeah, I think I got it there. Yeah, Shipwreck Shores splash pad, and then we kind of modified it to Shipwreck Shores. So a little modification. There was nothing like it, so there was no controversy. There was no other shipwreck, so nothing close to it in the name. Just to kind of go over what the other 4 names are that were kind of tied for distant second were Cool Off Cove, Deception Splash, Puget Paradise, and Eagles Lagoon. And I think somebody didn't have one. What was it? Soak Harbor was one that wasn't it? Somebody threw out there but never was an entry. So and so all 4 of these, like I said, they were all kind of pretty close together in a distant second. The one we went to really was the premier winner. Kind of going over the process here that we're going on. We're looking for council direction. That's why it's a council action here. We haven't named this to the applicant yet and let them know that they're the first place winner. Once we do that, it's actually a 4th grade class. If you have your confidential, no longer confidential, you got this yesterday because we kind of wanted to give you an advance notice, but we wanted to kind of keep it confidential until we reveal the name at this time. So assuming that you go ahead and pick the first one, then we'll work with the winning entrant to sign the legal documents, and then the final action for declaring the name will be on the June 4th City Council meeting right at the beginning. And then we'll also have the winner recognized at the grand opening of the Windjammer Park, featuring the Splash Park on June 29th. And so I'm ready to answer any questions, and certainly I have Kate and I have a lot of the commissioners or the committee members in the audience to answer any questions that you have.
Are you going to tell us which school the 4th grade class?
We don't know.
We don't know?
Oh, there you go.
Oh, I guess we do know.
I knew it wasn't Crescent Harbor.
Well, yeah, I wondered about that.
Yeah, they got it like you see here. All they had was the grades. So in the applicant, we masked it for just to be objective there. Enviro Issues kind of spun us the information without knowing who the 37 applicants were. So, but it was a nice essay. It really fit the criteria. The name really fit it. We just modified it a little bit. And it really fits the theme of the park, and you have a shipwreck there. So if you've been there already on the tour with a hard hat, you kind of know what it looks like, and that's one of the major parts of the splash park.
Questions, yes.
Yes. Are we going to the part of the scoring was on the explanation for why the names were chosen, and there were some really, really good short essays submitted. Are those going to be in the agenda packet maybe on June 4th so that people can see the essays that the entrants wrote?
You want all the 37 names? Or?
No, not all 37.
We focused on we gave you essays here. We can
Right.
put this in the packet for the top 5.
But it's not in the online packet, so someone couldn't go
Oh,
online.
Oh, we could submit it in the packet so they can see it.
Right, yeah, I just want the public to be able to see. I
Yeah.
don't know, like if
Yeah,
if Kate, if you want to read the one that was submitted for the winning one, it was really well done. I want to put you on the spot.
Sure. So what the class submitted is Shipwrecked Shores Splash Pad should be the name because boats and ships are a part of our history. We live on an island, and in early days we didn't have a bridge. Instead, we had ships called the Mosquito Fleet. They carried goods and people from the island to the mainland. Before that, Native Americans traveled from Whidbey Island on the water in canoes, and they used canoes for fishing. Explorers came here on tall ships in the 1790s. To this day, people are still using boats. We have the yacht club and the marina where you can see a beautiful sunset or a reflection in the water. We have hydro races in the melting hot summertime. We love the beautiful water. It is good for sailboating. Families go on boats and enjoy crabbing and fishing here. We also have a naval base. Finally, Oak Harbor's beaches were our playgrounds growing up. We would play and run and look for seashells. It was the best place to be. When people can't come to the splash park, it will be just like they are out on the shimmering water, plus they'll have a gorgeous view of the waterfront. The drawings of the splash park even have a shipwreck. Shipwrecked Shores Splash Pad is the best name for the park.
Thank you. It's so cute. I just want everybody.
So, yes, Councilor Survey.
Do we need a motion? I move to adopt Shipwreck Shores as the official name for the new splash park at Windjammer Park.
Second.
So we've got a motion in 2 seconds to adopt Shipwrecked Shores as the official name for the splash park.
So this is a preliminary selection, and then we'll have it as a resolution and all the tie-up stuff on the June 4th.
Okay, Mr. Servadius made the motion, and I'm going to give it a second to Mayor Pro Tem. Any other questions or input? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Looks like it passes unanimously. So thank you very much. Kate, thank you for a lot of help and a lot of work, and especially to the committee.
And
for
you know,
your
what was
help.
really nice is the committee, this was the one name that the entire committee was unanimous on in our top 5. And so it was, I think you guys would agree, it was remarkably easy to come to consensus. And so it was really pretty great considering we're all coming from different backgrounds.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I didn't show this to the selection committee because it was sort of outside, but this group actually submitted some little drawings with their entry, but we didn't put it in the selection process because it was trying to keep it fair, but these are quite cute, so I would pass them around. And Rich Tiehouse told me this morning, we actually had a shipwreck in Oak Harbor. Old Mailer dock, a ship caught fire and collapsed in the backside. So I just learned that this morning. So it's actually more historical than we thought.
We've had a shipwreck here. Wow. Well, interesting.
These are really cute. And you can give them to Blaine when we're finished. I'll pick them up tomorrow.
Thank you, Brett.
This is Hillcrest.
I kind of like the misspellings. I think they should have gone with the misspelled version. It's cool.
Yeah,
Shipwreck.
this one too.
Yeah, when they learn life lessons, the grammar police always fall behind you.
Okay, as those are being passed around, we'll move on then at this time with Development Services section, and we'll go to A, which is discussion of the Transportation Benefit District topics, material change policy, ballot measure, project list. And I see we've got our city engineer, Jim Bridges, and our development services director, Steve Powers, and our senior planner, Dennis Lefebvre, joining us at the table. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll kick off this discussion. Good afternoon, Council. As the Mayor indicated, we do have 3 items that we'd like to address for our Transportation Benefit District. We're moving that process along. And everything is kind of evolving in good order here and in a timely fashion, which we need to, considering the ballot issue that we're looking at and some of the deadlines that are associated with that. The first piece that I would like to identify is the draft resolution that is required of all transportation benefit districts. It's actually codified in RCW 3673-160, which a copy of I included it in your packet. and it deals with a material change. It establishes a policy that can be utilized by the district that if any project that we identify in our work plan or finance plan exceeds a certain amount over the estimated dollar amount or timeline, or if there's a material change that needs to be reviewed by the district, this policy will allow you to do that. It sets up a public hearing as a potential review for the public, and then it gives you the option on how to deal with that cost overrun or time overrun or material change. That's a requirement for all TBDs, so it's kind of a standard procedure. There are several examples out there which I utilize off of MRSC, so that's what the framework is for ours. Any questions on that first piece? And again, this is all in draft. We'll review this at a regular session later on. The second resolution, of course, is the one that we need to prepare to send to the county auditor for the placement of our ballot issue on the November ballot. This resolution actually began in our legal department, which is a proper place for this one to begin. But it again establishes what we're looking at doing. It places it on the November 5th general election as we were directed by the board to move forward with. And it is for the creation of the 0.2% sales tax for the district members, which is the city of Oak Harbor. So this will get that procedure moving. One thing I would like to address is that we don't have in this proposition a list of the projects that we're looking at, a prioritized list. We are actually going to have a discussion about that after this discussion on the resolution. And in looking at other communities' resolutions, it's kind of mixed. Anacortes and Bellingham did not have a full list of projects in their ballot resolution, so to speak. But Moses Lake had an extensive list in their ballot resolution. So it's really up to the desires of the board to give us direction on how you want to proceed with that. Any questions on the resolution? Again, it was came out of Nikki's shop, but it looked pretty good to me.
So I have a question. Did you say Anacortes had no project?
They didn't identify a list of projects in the resolution to set the ballot on the in their election. They identified the source of projects, but they didn't have an established list. Where on the other hand, Moses Lake had a pretty extensive list in their resolution. There are other options that we've been looking at that could get that list of projects out to the public. Our city administrator brought forth a fact sheet that we could utilize, so there's other methods that we could incorporate. So any questions on the resolution itself? It's draft form again, and it'll come back to you at a regular council meeting.
Not really the resolution, but you have got to repeatedly educate the public on what the money's going to be used for. It will be voted down in a nanosecond. I don't know if it's best to list specific or generally, more than just a general, but kind of a medium descriptive of what it is. But if you don't explain, it will be flat. I don't think I'm wrong on this. You've got to explain and do it soon and over and over and over and Facebook, anything, tweets, Twitters, you name it. Channel 10, the chamber, anyway, even sends a speaker out to the different groups to talk. Because the more you get it out, the more they hear it, the importance that they will know and what a benefit will be to them. But if you don't do anything, I can guarantee you it will fall flat at the polls. And I don't think I'm wrong. I think you can talk to if they know why and they understand it, they'll back it. If they don't, we don't have a prayer to get this through, I'm afraid.
I think we want to spin it the positive way.
Yes,
Which means
yes.
we say that we all want to promote it. And I think that's all of us. That's all staff,
Right.
that's all council members. Certainly, we need to all be for this and educating the community, because this is something that they got to know how to vote on it. And so we've got to educate them how to do it. And certainly, if we can get other identities that can actually do the campaigning, then they're welcome to do that too. But I don't know, it's not a prerequisite. So I did a sales tax initiative in another community that went to a referendum that passed at 66% the first time and 80% the second time. And so we were fortunate not to have an opposition, but education, and I did a lot of slides, a lot of presentations on the different community organizations. So I think right now it's focusing on whether you want to go forward with a referendum. And certainly we've kind of given you some preliminary on the fact sheets and some of the education material, and we'll continue to refine that education material. And I think if you want to go forward, I know that me and staff are committed to do our best to advocate, or to educate, I can't say advocate, to educate in the community. So, and certainly we will assist the council in doing that. And so it just really takes a team effort to make this thing happen and do it. But I don't think it's non-attainable. I think citizens aren't necessarily opposed to higher taxes if they feel like they're getting higher services. And that's the key, and that's why we're talking about what services or what roads they're going to fix and why we need this. And that's the message that we have to do under education to really make this a successful referendum.
And you might even ask for suggestions from the public. I mean, it's amazing where they find one certain pothole and they're not gonna let go of it, or where the road seems to be gravel to them. But, I mean, make them part of our decision. That's who we work for. And somehow make them part of the decision, or to feel like they're part of the decision.
Yeah, and I know you've had a lot of history before we got here, and so we've already talked about the need, and that's the reason why the council established the transportation benefit district, and that's why you're interested in doing this referendum, because the need is really there financially for us to maintain roads. Otherwise, we're going to see more potholes, and so this is kind of a pothole tax. I think that's probably a simple way to put it. So.
There's a bicycle rider in town who will let us know every pothole around, and why haven't we fixed it? And yes, I mean, we just got to reach out. I can't stress the importance of that.
Councilor Servatius.
Thank you, Mr. Lefebvre. Thank you. This has been in the back of my brain wondering where we're at, so I appreciate the update very much. I do want to second with what Mrs. Munn said. Having been through a couple of school levies, I was the fundraising chair on the last one. I know Erica has been through it. I don't want to take this for granted on what will or won't pass. I think if most people are informed, most people would probably support this when they understand, as a percent of the discretionary income that they have and what they spend, and what it means as far as the streets. They'll probably support it, but I don't want to take it for granted at all, and I hope they do support it. Do you have an idea then? You sounded like you're heading this up. Will you put together a plan for us and a timeline, essentially what's going to go into that campaign, so that we can kind of weigh in on that as well?
Yeah, we'll do some fact sheets, and I think we'll utilize council time in discussion as we prepare for this. So as we continue to educate, and certainly the mayor and I and other our staff and council members could reach out to the various service organizations and provide speeches there and communicate them, and certainly work with the newspaper in providing information and outreach to the chamber and the other organizations, all working together.
Okay, thank you.
So I know that Blaine talked about this. This will come to council for a vote, and
June 4th, Mayor.
Okay, and I think obviously we've got to be unanimous. I feel like we need to be unanimous. If we're not, then I would have concerns about it. So, but that's you'll get your chance to vote on it, or bring your questions in to us. I too am concerned about the campaign and how that gets done. We've got to do our best to make our citizens realize that we're going to use that money, and it will be money that we've not had, and we're going to use it wisely and have a very good plan as to how we're going to do it. So, Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. I wholeheartedly agree with Councilmember Huntz about having the project list in the ballot measure materials. I don't think they actually publish a pamphlet on yours, but there is an online one, so I don't know if June 4th is when we would discuss specific language or how we want to approach that, but to say we want to fix potholes, period, is not. We need to say we need the project list out there, including in the ballot measure. So is that language something that we would talk about on the 4th, or are we just going to be deciding whether or not we want to put it on the ballot?
We do have an option in our timing. The drop dead date is August 6th. That's when we have to get the resolution to the county auditor.
Okay.
So we do have room for another discussion at a workshop in June. And then we can still make our regular meetings. I think the meeting in July we could make for the passage of the resolution and then still get it to the county auditor in time.
And is the resolution itself what will appear as the...
It has the ballot discussion in there. Nikki, I don't know if you want to address that, but
The ballot language is in the resolution.
yeah.
So same document, there's not two separate...
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions on the resolutions? Yes, sir.
Maybe if you're headed that way, are you going to address this then as far as the head of the project list?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. In fact, Jim Bridges is here to do that very thing. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So the handout that you all received tonight, this is a report of the projects we've identified in the first 5 years of the Transportation Benefit District if it's successful. It's based upon a $900,000 budget scenario. Every year, $900,000. Identifies the worst roads in the city that would be treated over that 5-year period. And in actuality, at the end of 5 years, based upon our worst case scenario, I believe we end up with, what is it, about one, my number's right here. Make sure I'm reading the right number. We spend $3.4 million on rehabilitation and $1 million on preventive maintenance during that time. Now, this project list doesn't include the major roads, the minor arterials, and the collectors. Those roads are eligible for federal funding and state grants, as opposed to the local roads, which do not meet that threshold for funding. And so those roads, we'll be actively seeking those grants and loans from the state and the feds to repair those. The document has several maps in it, shows you the locations of these roads. And, you know, I'm going to kind of back up here and talk a little bit about educating the public. Of course, I come from Eastern Washington, and I've been in 2 communities where this has been tried twice and both times voted down. That's because the project list was too limited. And so when you're talking a county-wide initiative at the time, they identified 20 projects in the county, it didn't take long to figure out that it wasn't going to be in front of my house. And that's what the point of this is. If it's going to be in front of your house, you're more likely to recognize the problem, you're tired of complaining about the problem, and you're more likely to vote to have the problem fixed. So I think it's a good idea to make sure that the public is well aware of the roads that are going to be taken care of, at least in the first 5 years. After the first 5 years, then what you would do is you transition into a preventive maintenance program, which was typically a chip seal program. A chip seal is they spray a thin layer of asphaltic oil down. They come in with a rock chip, and they have various size rock chips. You can go to 1/4 inch chip, you can go 3/8 chip, 5/8 chip. The bigger the chip, the rougher the road's going to be. For folks that live in a community that aren't used to riding on chip seals, you're used to riding on county roads, you're used to feeling that rumble when you drive, it can be a little bit of a disappointment, if you will, because they think they've got this new road in front of them, but it's going to run a little bit rougher. On the flip side, it's a little bit safer road, gives you a little bit better traction in the snow and ice. But at the end of the day, what that chip does is it seals that top of that road off. And in my travels around the city, what I've seen, based upon our road conditions, and some of the understanding of talking to staff, is we have really thin asphalts here. They are cracked. You're getting water underneath that pavement. It's causing that pavement to fail. It's failing faster than it should fail. So some of these projects identified are chip seal. Some of them are initial just a crack fill 1 year and come back and chip seal a few years later. Some are 1.5 inch asphalt overlay. They'll get a brand new asphalt street down on top of them. Going forward, after that first 5 years, then you get into preventive maintenance, and that's where you start doing your chip seal program, your annual chip seal program. And that is to keep those streets from failing, not only the original five-year program, but all the streets in the city at that point in time fall into that program and get cycled through. Typically, what you like to see is an asphalt pavement has a lifespan estimated between 12 and 15 years, depending on traffic loading. Most cities try to push that out to 25, 30 years, and that's what you see the bad failures. Asphalt chip seal, what that do is that'll give you about 7 years of life expectancy. And so, but it's difficult the more roads you have to try to get all that done. And so when you look at the totality of the roads in the city, you're probably going to have with closer to about a 10 to 13 year cycle of getting things chip sealed. They'll hold up. They'll still get preventive maintenance as needed, and they'll get crack filled and things of this nature. But the chip seal program would probably be a little bit longer than the 7 years. Chip sealing is about 10 to 20% the cost of asphalt pavement repair, and so the cost benefit is there to do it. Again, the trade-off is the rideability of the road. And so with that, I can stand for questions.
Councilor Servadius.
Thank you. 2 questions. You said there's different sizes of aggregate.
Yes.
So the first part, what would we anticipate using? And then can you explain the legend? So it says reconstruct structure. What does that mean? So those 2 questions. Aggregate, and then can you just explain the legend exactly? I think it explains
Right.
cracks and chip seal. What is the reconstruct structure?
Okay, reconstruct would be grinding it down to the base course material and either adding new base or taking the old base material, the gravel's out underneath of it, and coming back in and putting an asphalt pavement section on top of that.
And how big of aggregate are you talking? Chip seal, can we make it a little nicer to drive on?
You can. The finer the aggregate, the less lifespan it's going to have. A good comfortable aggregate is 5/8 aggregate. If you want a little bit smoother, you can go 3/8. But again, it's all based upon that rideability, and then there's the trade-off in lifespan. Once you start wearing that edge down, that fractured edge, then what's going to happen is obviously the road, it starts to, it's worn down, and you're only talking a thin asphalt overlay of material about that, and you're pushing that rock into that to try to get it to adhere. So once that's gone, it's time for a new one. So the bigger the chip, typically the more asphalt you see go down. They'll do what's called a double chip, because they've got to get more asphalt in it. So they'll spray the asphalt, they'll spread the chip, they'll come out and spray the asphalt, fill those voids, and then push a new rock back on top of that. I haven't seen that in the state in probably 15 years. They've gotten away from that. The oils have gotten better. They've realized that a smaller chip is just is as cost effective as that larger double dose chip, that double chip seal program. So.
Any questions? Any others? Okay.
So it sounds to me like this should come back to your June workshop for further discussion and refinement, and we'll go from there then.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we are now to park plan discussion. And we have our senior planner, Kat Mack, joining us. Kat, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. So here to update the City Council on the park plan, and I have copies to share with you. So as it's going around, I think the council has already received a copy of the park plan with the workshop packet. And that draft is already outdated. And so this is your new version. We wanted to get the document out and have people start looking at it as we are finalizing it as well. Most of the content type stuff is already in there. It's a lot of moving of information or simplifying. There was a lot of repetition of information that we kind of wanted to simplify. So that process was undergoing, and so this is the latest version. We're still working on it. We're going to share it with the park board next month. We're going to share it with the planning commission as we move through the adoption. So as much input as possible is what we're trying to look for. So,
And we'll send this electronically as well.
yes.
The new one, so for those of you who prefer to read electronically, you'll get that after today's workshop.
Thank you, Steve. So, just wanted to go over generally the layout of the park plan. When we started this process, we considered this as originally the format of the park plan was made in such a way that you do minimal effort to update it every 6 years. And so we kind of formatted the document in such a way to do that. So the structure kind of follows that kind of purpose. So the plan is divided into 3 sections. And section 1 has the vision, the goals and policies, and also the recommended plan. It captures all of the ideas that have been formulated over the years since the park plan was adopted in 1960, but also captures a lot of the recent information and plans that the city is kind of looking forward to. So that first section is where most of the changes occur every 6 years. The second portion of the section of the plan addresses all the nuts and bolts, all the analysis. Do we have enough parks? Do we have enough recreation facilities? We update the population information and find out if we have enough of those facilities to serve the population growth. So all of that is in section 2, the analysis portion of it. And then we have a section to address all the administrative policies for the Parks Division and kind of the day-to-day things that they kind of do and some policies guiding that. So that's how the plan is structured. It's similar to the 2009 plan. Not much has changed there. So in terms of analysis, what the park plan analysis seems to indicate is not very different than what the 2009 analysis did. So I'll give you a little short brief on what the analysis did in 2009 and how it is still similar currently. So spatial analysis, neighborhood analysis, neighborhood parks, we took a half-mile service area, because that's kind of typical of a service area for neighborhood parks. And then for community parks, they serve a larger area, so we had about 1 mile radius that they serve. So these were mapped out in 2009, and they were mapped out for this current update as well. Since our parks don't move around, the service areas are the same. We also threw in example for neighborhood parks. Neighborhood parks, I imagine it as, where you send your kids to go to the playground without having any safety issues between your house and the park. And so streets are considered kind of safety hazards for little children. So we kind of had this kind of we laid out the service areas, but then we cut them off at the major arterial if they were right in the middle of the service area. So that would split the service area. So that allows us to identify even existing neighborhoods that don't have neighborhood parks. Oak Harbor has a healthy number of neighborhood parks. We don't have a shortage of number of neighborhood parks, but there are certain locations that don't have them. So for example, the Scenic Heights corridor. So Scenic Heights you have the trailhead, you have Friend Marsh, you have access to a park, but you don't have a neighborhood park like you do in the northeast part of town. So those are the things that are the same as they were in 2009, they are now as well. And so those will be continuing strategies that the park plan will try to address to try and find areas where you can have parks. Now, the community park service area identified the northwest section as something, as an area that doesn't have any community parks. If you look at all our parks, Fort Nugent, Volunteer Park, Windjammer Park, they're all on the southern side of the city. When you do a mile radius, you see that the northwest section of the town is least covered by a community park. So the 2009 plan identified that area, and today we're making some steps towards getting some community park space in that quadrant. So the park reinforces that idea and kind of gives a venue for future planning for that park. So that's included in this update, a little more detail in terms of acquisition of land and so on. The plan recognizes that we could lose some parkland. Fort Nugent Park, 20 acres is owned by the school district. There's potential that they could need that for a facility. So when we lose 20 acres, we lose all of those soccer fields. And so that reduces our level of service. So more shows to how important it is to get more community park space. Same thing with the Windjammer Park ball fields. The community has been talking about that for a long time. Again, if you gain some community land on the northwest side, you can talk about replacing some of those facilities. So if you look at the northwest quadrant and the need for parkland in that area and the amount of land that you need, half of it is needed just to replace some of the existing facilities that we have by moving or shifting them around. And then you have population growth on top of that. And so the level of analysis, service analysis calculates how many recreational facilities a community like Oak Harbor needs, and then kind of proposes that try to locate them together, because once you locate these services together, you can share facilities, parking and lighting and drainage, and all of that is somewhat consolidated. So those ideas are captured in the recommended plan. Some of the trails plans are still in session from the last plan. They still continue to, they've been modified slightly to make a little more sense, and some things that have occurred since then made us change some of those, but the concept is still to connect trails all around the city so that you have Oak Harbor connected to the region, and also to develop trails within the city corridor. Of course, your central business district, you want a lot of pedestrian activity. You have Whidbey Island, Whidbey Avenue corridor that has all your facilities. It has your schools, your fire station, and so on. So that's a corridor that you want to enhance with also pedestrian connections as well. So all of these are similar to what the 2009 plan has. So I'll stop there. I know that there was a copy of the draft plan out. One more short note. We've connected the park plan with the 6-year capital improvements plan, and we've taken the project list from there. So there's a connection between this plan and the budget document and the capital improvements plan. So that connection is pretty clean, made in this plan. So, and that's another plug-in for that section. So with that, I'll stop, and if you have questions, thoughts, be happy to chat about that.
Yes, Councilor Heisen.
Is there, first, since it's a draft, take a look at the graph on page 18. There's just a bunch of typos in it. No big deal. But, when it gets cleaned up, there's just a bunch of typos in the graph. But in terms of reviewing this draft plan, I thank you for connecting it with the project list. That's fantastic for continuity. Is there any part of this that you want us to pay particular attention to and provide feedback on?
If anything, the recommended plan is where I would ask to make sure that we've captured what we think the direction for the park system is kind of going towards, and if we've captured most of the community's desires there, the direction we want to go. So I think that would be a good place to look at. If there are gaps or if there's an idea that wasn't captured, we can always improve that.
Perfect, thank you.
I'll also mention that, of course, we're going, CAC rather, is taking it through the Park Board as well as the Planning Commission. So you'll have the benefit of recommendations from 2 of your advisory committees, right? And then we'll come to you, I think we're scheduled to come to the June workshop, talking about this again, and we're targeting, if all goes well, July 9th as the date where we'd be in front of you at a regular council meeting asking for action on the plan. Did I get that? Yeah. Okay.
And that action is to approve
Yes, sir.
ultimately the park plan.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And just another quick tidbit, you've heard us mention this before, but, you know, the question might come to you, or someone might ask you, well, is there significance to this document outside of the city of Oak Harbor? And the answer to that is yes, because if we want to be able to access park grant funding through RCO, they require that you have a current park plan on file with them that meets their requirements, and it has a shelf life of 6 years. And so, you know, we got our Windjammer Park Integration Plan certified by RCO, so that we were able to be eligible for grants down at Windjammer Park. When we get this one certified, then that will continue to make us available for grants elsewhere in the community. So this has another round of significance, not only in helping us make our own decisions, but potentially securing outside funding for some of our parks.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I have a question. We have an app we use on our phone a lot that says Washington Trails. And obviously we have a few short-lived trails, but would we be able to add that so that they also include us if someone's looking, you know, I want to go to Oak Harbor and what trails are there, to add it to that? Have you seen that app?
I've checked out the website, but I don't have,
We
I don't
usually
have the
download
app.
the maps before we go in case we don't have good cell, but.
We can look into to how to get it on their inventory, and once we get it on their website, it should transfer to the app. But yeah, we can look into that.
Is that through the state agency, do you know, Mrs. Mills?
I believe so.
Okay,
Washington
we'll look
Trails.
it up.
It's Washington All Trails, and I get little blurbs, like if legislation is voting on money or grants or something to them, they'll give you an update. But it's handy if you're going somewhere, oh, wow, I haven't been here, and any type of trail they have, they'll short, medium, long, whatever, but we may as well be on it. We've got them, let's use them.
Councilor Surveys.
Thank you, Kat. Looking at page 31, can you give us an update and stretch our vision? I know you talked about the long-term goal of building a trail system that would circumnavigate the city. Is that still, I mean, I know that's out there.
Yes, so, let me see, where is that? I think it's ahead in the plan.
System of trails
So,
out there in the city.
page 15. So this map was the one that was updated from our last, I wish I had a copy of the old one, a slightly refined version of that, but it carries the same concepts, kind of considers you know, some of the nodes that are surrounding Oak Harbor that are kind of natural features, and then connecting them through trails, through development, or some other means, and that's the kind of the conceptual layout. So yes, it's still in there.
Thank you. Super cool.
Yes, Councilor Wesson.
Do you have any recent updates on our grant applications for our regional park?
That's in my report.
Oh, sorry.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Kat.
Thank you very much.
We will move on to the last section of under development services, city recognition, Main Street Historic District logo.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I neglected to put a slide. I should have put a slide together so that we could all look at it, but it is in your packet. So backing up a step, the Oak Harbor Main Street has adopted an official logo that they would like to use for their historic downtown. They submitted to the city in hopes that we will adopt it and recognize it as the district logo for branding and marketing purposes, especially for their wayfinding signage and district entrance sign goals and projects. And so that was your quick summary statement on page 61. Page 62 shows you the letter from Matthew Williams, their executive director at that time, who basically indicates what I've just said to you, that it was formally adopted by their board. He's giving you some understanding of the color schemes and they intend to use, as well as the concept behind the design. And then on page 64 is actually a photocopy of, they produced a sticker that I think they're beginning to hand out that shows you a little bit different version of it colorized. And so you may be saying to yourself, well, why are we talking about this? And the reason is it falls into one of those categories of it's a great idea, but how do we make it work? So when we start talking about signage, whether it's on private property or on the street right-of-way, as you probably can guess, we have some rules and regulations that we have to try to figure out how we make something like this work. So obviously when we're talking about signs, like on private property, we're going to be dealing with our sign code. When we're on the street rights of way, we're going to be typically dealing with this gigantic volume of things called the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And Mr. Bridges will forgive me for speaking about engineering things, but that's about as far as I'm going to go into that, which is, it's basically the Bible that tells you what street signs are supposed to look like. And so that actually is relatively easy for us to deal with, but the flaw or the problem we wanted to overcome is how do we handle if another organization was to ask us to put signs in the street right of way that were wayfinding signs. And so the way that we think we can solve this is when we look at those sets of rules and regulations, districts can be recognized on those kind of wayfinding signs. And so from the staff perspective, the best way for us to do that is to have the council officially recognize the logo as being the historic downtown district logo. That gives us the ability to work with them so that those signs can go in the right of way. It also gives us some ability to talk to some other group. If they say, hey, we want to put our signs in the right of way for our association, they'll be a little bit different because it's not dealing with the geographic area. So that takes care of the right of way signs. A more challenging problem to solve was they have permission to put some relatively large entryway signs on a downtown business, which is very close to the highway. But the businessman would only grant them permission to put their sign on that property if it did not subtract from the total number of signs that he is allowed to have at his commercial business. And if you think about it, our sign code revolves around a thing. So there's a business there, and based upon zoning and size of building and all of these things, we figure out how many signs they get, how big they can be, and where they can go. So how do we deal with a sign that's on private property that's not really tied to a business, especially when the businessman doesn't want it to subtract from the total number of signs that he can have? Our idea is that there is an exemption section in the sign code that says these kinds of signs are exempt from the provisions of this chapter. And one of those, while not a perfect fit, is that, and I'm going to read it so that I don't make a mistake when I paraphrase, regulatory, informational, identification, or directional signs installed by or at the direction of a government entity. Well, if we stretch that a bit, we can interpret that to say if the council officially recognizes this logo as being an official district, a place in our town, we can say that it's meeting that informational requirement. And while it won't be installed at your direction, it will be installed under your recognition. So we've kind of stretched those words a bit to fit this particular situation. Hence, we'll be coming forward to you, I think, at an upcoming meeting, asking you to approve a resolution officially recognizing this as the Main Street historic downtown logo for their wayfinding and district signage purposes. So I'm happy to take your questions.
Councilor Hodge.
Thank you. That was an excellent description and explanation. And it answers the first question I had when I looked at it was, it didn't say anything about the Main Street Association, but it's not an advertisement, it's a district indicator or
Right.
wayfinding, so.
Right.
So theoretically, the Creative Arts District, if it was a location, say this is the Creative Arts District, they could do something similar as the
Yes.
geographic indicator?
You could do something like that.
Okay.
The other thing, which is fairly typical, although I don't know that we will get there in our community, are historic districts.
Yeah.
So for when I worked in the city of Phoenix, we had a number of historic neighborhoods, which meant that a certain number of properties met all these different criteria. And so there were signs that demarked the boundaries of those historic neighborhoods. And that was incorporated into the street signage. So that's another kind of district that you will typically see, like when you're out and going into other communities.
Yeah, and one other area they could do on an avenue sign or a street sign, sometimes you'll see in cities, they'll put a logo on that. So that's something that with the city adopting that, if that's something the Main Street program wanted to go forward with, that's something we could talk about too, and it would really denotate that district area. So it kind of adds the ambiance on there by having that trademark, and they really like this logo and want to run with it. So it's a good way to make it happen and allow them to utilize the logo and still meet our sign requirements.
Yeah, it could keep us out of hot water in terms of not advertising anything in particular, but just describing the area. No, I love it. It's a great idea.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I believe the Gary Oak Society is trying to do a topper.
Yes, they've talked about that.
I haven't gotten the final design or whatever, but they would like to designate that one avenue from Highway 20 over to Regatta as the Gary Oaks area. So it will be coming sometime.
Councilor
I
Survey.
should know the answer to this, but I don't. I think Main Street obtained the certified local government designation.
Actually, the city did that, but now Main Street is able to take advantage of it.
Okay,
Yes.
so it doesn't give them any different authority as far as their own signage guidelines or anything like that?
No, it's actually that the city was certified as a certified local government.
Okay.
And what that does is it allows Main Street now to access funding and training that they were not otherwise able to access. And just as I may follow on to that, not at tomorrow's Historic Preservation Commission meeting, but the one in June, because we are now a CLG, we have the representative from DAP, Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation. They are coming to do a 2.5-hour training at our June Historic Preservation Commission meeting. But we wouldn't have access to that training had we not gotten that CLG status.
Okay.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Steve. We'll move on to Legal Department, Public Defense Services and Conflict Counsel. City Attorney Nikki Esparza. Welcome, Nikki.
Thank you, Mayor. So before I start, I'm going to give you a little disclaimer here and say that I don't have any oversight over the public defense contract. I don't administer the contract. That's Mr. Oborn's job. I am here tonight providing Mr. Oborn some technical assistance, not substantive assistance, because I oversee the prosecution function, and that would be a conflict of interest for me to in any way get involved with the substantive aspects of the public defense contract. So, what we're here to talk about today is our public defense conflict list. The city has an obligation under the Sixth Amendment to provide indigent defendants with defense. And we contract with Island Defense as our primary public defender for individuals who are charged with misdemeanor offenses in the city limits. But sometimes Island Defense has a conflict, and when that happens, we have to pay a conflict defense attorney. Currently, we only have one conflict attorney on our conflict list, and her contract expires in August, and she does not have an intention of renewing. In 2016, council authorized an amount of $55 per hour for our conflict attorneys, and that did only generate one response when we put it out for RFP. So our office did some research on rates that other jurisdictions nearby are paying, and after conversing with Mr. Oborn, it seems like $85 is a more appropriate rate that may in fact generate a a bigger conflict list. Because there is a possibility, always, because we're in a small town, that both parties could have a conflict, and then we're kind of in trouble. And we actually did have that happen once in the last 2 years. We had both Ms. Carter and Island Defense had a conflict, and so the judge appointed from the bench, and it was to an attorney that we didn't have a conflict or didn't have a contract with. And so that attorney just ended up billing us, and we had to pay, because when the judge appoints from the bench, that's what you do. So we'd like to have a bigger list than just one. So we don't have a great deal of conflicts, and there has been a change in the last year to Island Defense's contract. Originally, the payment amount was $10,000 a month, but that amount automatically resets if it falls below, I believe it's 20% of the caseload. And so when we looked at the caseload numbers, actually Carla did this year, the numbers were below that 20% mark. And so we are currently paying Island Defense, I believe, $7,500 a month, or is it 78? 7,600 a month. So we have decreased our total obligation to Island Defense by $2,400 a month. The number of conflict attorneys, or the number of conflict cases that we get, will not meet that amount at all. So, and we did not adjust the budget for that, because the budget was already set before that contract adjusted. So, like I said, we looked at other cities nearby, and we reached out to Office of Public Defense. Anacortes pays $85 an hour, Arlington pays $75, Bellingham has a flat rate, $450 for DV, $500 for DUI, $400 for all other case types. Lake Stevens is $75 an hour. Monroe is a flat of $300 to $375, or for probation or ongoing matters, $75 an hour. Mount Vernon is $85 an hour. Island County only pays $65 an hour, but again, that's $10 more than what we pay, which is not typically what we see. Usually we end up paying more than Island County. Jefferson County is fairly low, it's $55. San Juan County pays a flat rate of $690. Skagit County has an interesting way of doing things. They pay $7,000 a month for their contracted attorneys, what it appears to be conflict attorneys, and then it is decreased by $212 each for each case that the contractor has to decline per month due to caseload limits. Snohomish County, apparently they're paid quite low, $40 an hour. Whatcom County district court cases range from $390 to $500 per case. So we are below the average, certainly, and in discussing this with Mr. Oborn, he felt comfortable putting it back out for RFP at $85 an hour. And so this is just to inform you of what we've been doing behind the scenes and let you know that we're going back out for RFP to see if we can't generate some interest and get a bit larger conflict panel.
Councilor Gervais.
Thank you. I'm curious if you were to break down any of those flat fee scenarios and the average amount of time that one of those cases would take.
I've thought about it. So that's an interesting question. It's actually impossible to really answer, because each type of case, sure, you have to put in a different amount of work. So I do see that some of these break it down by like DV, DUI, and then other types of misdemeanors. So when you're talking about a DV case, you're going to have at least 3 to 4 hearings, right? You're going to have preliminary arraignment, at least 1 pretrial, probably 2, ruddiness, trial. Most cases don't go to trial. So you're probably talking an average of 4 hearings, plus on a DV, you're interviewing at least 1 witness, and you're prepping any motions. So you're talking at least probably 5 hours of work, right? So that's pushing that $100 an hour mark for some of these. When you're talking about DUIs, you're looking at the same number of hearings at least, but on DUIs, you have to be looking at suppression motions, the stop, the BAC, things like that. So some of these are taking into account the additional work, but if you're talking about thefts or criminal trespass or these other types of misdemeanor cases, you are not looking at a significant number of hours of work.
And you said we've only had this once in 2 years? We've had a conflict attorney that we've needed?
No, we've needed more than that, but I'm saying we only have a contract with one attorney. And so there was a situation where both our primary and our conflict attorney had a conflict, and so the judge then appointed another attorney from the bench.
So all I would say then, I guess, is listening to the numbers you gave from 40 to 85, I don't know if I necessarily want to jump right to the top of the range. Why not 75 or 80?
Okay. Councilor Larson?
Thank you, Mayor. I was thinking the same thing. It sounded like a lot of, we were in the 70s, 75, and, you know, from 55 is obviously low. We're not generating a lot of interest, but I would rather not see us shoot to the top of that range, so I'd like to see an incremented, you know, somewhere in the $75 range for an initial offering, and then see what kind of interest we get on that, as opposed to being the top earner or the top payer.
Well, there was some thinking on that, and the reason why we kind of went the top payer is one, we talked about the revenue that we had because we dropped the amount from our primary person down from $10,000 to a month to $7,600 a month. So there is some savings there, and really we were looking for multiple, and we know from experience why we only got one person now, and now we're on notice. But certainly we can give it a try at 75. I'm not opposed to that. If that's the direction of the council, and we'll see what we get in interest, and if we get zero, then we'll come back a little bit more. But yeah, there's still some with 40, so it's interesting. I don't know how they're functioning that well. When typical attorneys are anywhere from up to $350 an hour, I mean, I'm just kind of amazed how that we even got one person at 55. So it's just interesting how there's some people out there that they're still interested. And I know in doing the hours that were reported for the person we have now, it's higher than the $85 an hour. So assuming his hours he gives us some hour rates, and then we can divide it by the monthly rate we do it. But it varies every month, but we looked at kind of the average, and it was higher than the 85, and so that's why we were thinking going on the higher end.
And the other thing that we did discuss is that we are on an island, and so our defense bar is more limited, and there is some thought that it might be a good idea to pull from Skagit as well, or try and pull, and certainly we can't pull at 55. It's not worth their drive. So.
Do we know how long Island County has been at 65?
I don't know.
What did 75 Island County?
Island County's at 65.
Okay, I think we've got a couple of $75.
Okay, we can get 75 and try.
I would agree with that.
It's
Good.
still significantly higher than what we're at now, so that's fine. Yeah.
Anyone else? Questions or input? Okay, good. Thank you for that. We will move on to engineering. Passaic Sewer Vault project update. Okay. I like pictures.
I know it's the one.
So welcome to our Public Works Director, Kathy Rosen, and again, our city engineer, Jim Bridges.
He's making some progress. I like that.
Thank you. So we thought we'd give you an update on the Passaic Sewer Vault. It's been on my radar since the day I hired on. I understand it was it's a point of contention at some folks, and just to let you know.
Only
so,
one?
Yeah. Well, and I think, after hearing the history, rightfully so. So, as you know, we have a contract with BHC Consultants to design and strengthen the Pasek Sewer Vault. There was some analysis done that said that the top of the vault that's existing wasn't structurally sound to hold enough folks that would be gathering up there, or the monument that was planned in place up there. So that turned into a scope of work for them to design a project. That design went out to bid. The city received no bids. I came on board. We contacted BHC, said what happened in their opinion, and they freely admitted that the set of plans were not constructible. So, talking with my staff, we all felt that it was difficult. It was to some extent overkill from what we've seen. Now, we're not structural engineers in my department, and I'm certainly not one. But it seemed a lot of overkill that was taking place. So we met with John Davies, their development manager, one of the partners of BHC, and he has agreed to waive their fees from that point forward to assist us in getting this project designed and constructed. We've talked with their staff on several occasions about options. And the preferred option really is just to come back and cap the existing vault with a concrete lid. Would be no demolition except take the handrails off, take the park benches off so we could perform the work. So we would put a 10-inch concrete lid on top of the vault itself. That would take the structural load. But to make that work, what you have before you is our concept of what we need to do out there. That 10-inch vault, I tried to get them down to a 7-inch vault, because a 7-inch vault is a step, normal step height, and then we could make not need so much room for a ramp. The 10-inch vault would require a ramp and a set of steps, so we thought we'd just go with a ramp. So what you have here was we are wanting to go ahead and bump out the sidewalk, as you see, along Pioneer Way, into the existing parking area. That would create a nice landscape area in front of the vault. It's nice and sloped, match the slope of the ramp. The ramp would get folks to the top. Looking at across the other side of the street, those two ADA ramps are not up to standard, up to code, so we would improve those as well. We would relocate the crosswalk to the east side of Pasek. That is the more predominant walk route for folks, and so that's where we're at with this. So, and I got a base estimate of about 75 to 80,000 right now. Construct total improvements that you see here.
From the same engineer?
No, from me. So
I can live with that one. Excuse me.
Councilor
I
Lambert?
should raise my hand. I like the design. I have a question about the bump out that goes out into the bike lane though. Aren't we required to have a bike lane on that street?
Well, bike lanes, and I'm not familiar enough if this is a designated bike path or not. Bike lanes, you can have shared lanes as well. And we could certainly put down what's called a sharrow in the lane path itself, which is an arrow with a bicyclist on top of it. So it's the symbol for both vehicle and bicycle traffic.
It's just something that jumps out at me because I see people ride their bikes on that thing there.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to force them out into the traffic lane when they get down to that point. In the alternative, with the width of this thing, I think it's 22 feet in depth, and the total width is about 60 feet, something like that, for that slab out there. Is there a possibility to handicap ramp off the end? Because what, 1 and 12, going in there 10 feet, And then you're right on the edge where you have handrail possibilities there too, and you're down close to this corner where you're doing the improvements on that corner. And then you're gonna have the step up. To mitigate the step up, it would be possible to do a cast-in-place planter on the lid so that we would have that
Barrier.
that barrier and the green there all cast without going out into the street and doing the demo in the street and the curb and everything else that goes with it. In the flow of the water, what happens to the stormwater that flows down here from catch basin to catch basin along the curb?
Well, on this end is where the catch basin is,
Yeah.
where we would tie in. So we would.
What about the other end?
There's not another catch basin down here for quite some.
Where
quite
does
some
the
ways.
water
So
go?
this would all be graded to make sure that the water would continue to flow around.
Yeah.
But your concept is certainly valid, and it's something that we keep looking at
It's
toying with.
less complicated.
It is. There are the existing sidewalk in front of the structure needs to be replaced because the panels are,
Say that again?
the existing sidewalk in front of the existing structure where
Yeah.
the vault is. The vault comes into some of that sidewalk
Right.
itself, so you're gonna have that ridge
Part of
line
it's gonna
there.
be torn
So the
out.
sidewalk still has to come out some way because we have to have that
Okay.
48-inch separation for ADA. And so we would still have some bump out in there, maybe not quite as drastic. I like we have toyed around with the ramps on the ends. And so all those things are being considered right now, so.
Yeah, and I know all this history precedes you and both of you, and it's one of the things that was, even though it doesn't seem like it's a big budget item, this thing was launching off towards $300,000
Yeah.
before this was all done. And Kathy gave me a set of plans and specs, and at best, the plans were incomplete and sloppy. And we should not have paid for that. Our staff, and our council should have been on top of this before $72,000 was paid. And I think that's about what was paid out. I think, Patricia, $72,000 was paid out on this contract.
Off the top of my head, I can't answer that.
Well, that's my recollection of the last time I talked to you about it. And our contract is 76,000,
76.
78.
Right.
We just about wiped out that thing. And this firm, is not my favorite firm because of this, because it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing, I think, to us. And I think it was embarrassing the way it was presented. And I don't think it's our shining star on our projects. And our staff makes pretty good decisions. They do their homework. This one went into a dark hole, in my opinion.
Right, and I appreciate your sentiment, and that's the same sentiment we relayed to BHC, that how did this get this far out of hand? With an admitted set of plans that were not constructible. And that, going forward, we would not seriously consider BHC for any other work because of something like this, and they knew it. And they stepped up to the plate, recognized their mistake, and are willing to, forego any future costs. So we are not paying them any more. That remaining $4,000 is going to be remaining there.
Yeah.
We are coming back to the council with a contract amendment for time extension with the firm, but it is a no fee increase on it. So,
Yeah.
but we did relay your sentiment directly to them.
Well, thank you. And, I had conversations with the mayor on this. There were 5 options, clearly 5 options that were substantially less complicated, in the range of $5,000 to $65,000. Your number at 65 is kind of interesting now.
Well, that would be all the
Now-
work included here.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but the way it was going before, it was going to the moon. The one question I have on this is, Kathy, we talked in some of our wastewater treatment plant meetings about the route that the Navy is gonna possibly take. Are we going too far ahead of our discussions with the Navy? If we do these improvements, are we gonna come through here and dig things up again?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that route, my understanding is that pipe doesn't enter into the vault except through the lift station as an overflow. It would come in here with an overflow. So that water, wastewater coming from the Navy would not go into the vault and then have to go back out. We wouldn't have to take any pipes out of the vault.
So there's no chance in our discussions with the Navy that the scenario would cause us to redo brand new work?
Correct. We would have to go in there and plug some pipes to keep that water from going
Sure,
in there.
sure.
The reason we're not considering the filling of the vault is because of its location and the lack of stormwater infrastructure we have there. And so to leave it open so that if we do come back later and say, hey, we want to retrofit a stormwater project in there and put a small treatment facility in there, we can continue. That's why we're not looking at filling. Filling would obviously be the cheapest option. But that's what we're going that direction, so.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
We'll always be friends.
Yes, we will.
Councilor Servadius?
Thank you. Ideas, expected timelines for completion?
We'd like to get out to bid this fall. Yeah.
Councilor Heisler?
Thank you. Could you just briefly explain the justification for the bump out?
That was to get, one, we had to get our separation from this new elevated lid, because right now it's flush to the sidewalk. So we're gonna go up 10 inches, and so you have to have the 48 inches for separation for ADA access on the sidewalk. And then, so you start looking at that, you say, well, now I need to build a ramp, and my ramp has to have a 1 in 12 slope, and I can ramp off of one end or the other end, or I ramp off the middle. And so we went with this concept, pushed it out, took up that lane, and that way we could provide some landscape area as well to kind of add some beautification to the project.
Makes perfect sense, thank you.
But again, this is just a concept, so.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and we will keep you posted. I'll see you on the 4th with the updated contract.
Okay.
Good work.
What's that?
Zero house.
Okay, next and last section, we've got 2 items. First is Arts Commission, Creative District. Therese Kingsbury joining us. Welcome, Therese.
Yeah, she's joining me for support and certainly an advocate of this and a strong advocate of creative arts. So I've kind of been talking about this coming, so it's finally here. So we didn't quite get it on the agenda with some of the other arts issues we had last month, so I pushed it to this month. So just to start off with kind of an overview of where we started from, Therese invited me to a meeting of the Washington State Arts Commission where they were doing some outreach on creative districts. And so, and the concept of creative district was talked about. One of the things we talked about early on is maybe we integrate this with the Opportunity Zone with the Main Street downtown. It's kind of, when I look at this concept, I asked the lady when she was talking about creative arts, I thought this is kind of like a Main Street program, but it's focusing on creative arts. And I said that to her, and she said, yep, that's exactly what it is. So maybe that makes sense to you, maybe it doesn't, but it makes sense to me as somebody who's worked with Main Street programs. And so it's kind of a fixed area that'll have some synergy. I'll kind of go into some more detail here. Certainly we've done a little initial outreach here with the Chamber of Commerce and other organizations and there was a number of organizations in the community that were at the presentation way back in 2018 that talked about this. And I know there's a lot of synergy in Langley. They're trying to do a creative district, and so I'll go into some more details of why we go forward. I'm just going to use the Washington State Arts Commission slides here for a little while. They fit in, so I figured I'll plagiarize them. So we're giving them credit for their slides and using that. So I think there's a problem with that. Is what is a certified creative district, and that's the goal here. If we move forward with this program to create the certified district, and I talked about what we're talking about here is it really creates energy for this really important part of the segment of the creative community by having this certified district. and then why the program was created. A lot of good programs, you plagiarize other states, and Colorado was pretty successful with the creative districts and started this program kind of like the Main Street, and it talks about some of the benefits they were there. With creative districts were responsible for 5% annual increase in employment and 6% increase in revenue. And one of the things that's interesting about the creative economy, I won't say anything's bulletproof with the recession, but this economy continued to grow through the recession. So it really helps, and it makes a statement that they're seriously growing about. If we were to put forward an arts district or a creative district, then we're making a serious commitment to this sector and economy. So just a little history here. It's relatively new. And so the first district, which just started in October, or she just says fourth quarter of 2018. So I think there's only a few of them right now. There's a whole bunch of other communities in the state are moving forward with this program. And here, this kind of talks about the creative economy. It uses much more of a wider range of businesses, so we're talking a lot more than just artists, and so that's why sometimes I call this the creative art district, and it's really the creative district. So it includes artists, entertainers, restaurants, inventors, bakers, museums, writers, historic culture assets, food products, and manufacturing. So certainly a wider number of businesses, and it gives you some numbers there on the state side. This sector has grown by 3% annually since 2011, so some good numbers are there. And then kind of giving some whole numbers here. It's a major sector when you put all these businesses together in the sector in the economy, and it's a major employer here with almost 8% of the GDP rated to the creative economy here, and 4% growth from 2015 to 16. So these are some quite impressive figures here on how much important this sector is to the economy of the state. And here's another example of how a creative art district in Colorado was really able to take a community that lost 1,300 jobs, and they were able to do this creative arts district and really get some synergy in their community and to generate 150 startups and really create a creative arts community. And we already have a lot of creative arts in this community already, so to build upon. So we have some galleries in the downtown and certainly a lot of other synergy that we would put together if we went forward with doing this district. And then the benefits in the community here. And one of the things I back up on that slide here, these are good paying jobs. We're talking about here $26 an hour and $51,000 for the average salary. So this creative district has it's a good, these aren't low paying retail jobs we're talking about it. So that's one of the things we really want to push forward with it. So, and then going on to benefits in the community, these would create long-term jobs. Hopefully we would create synergy with new businesses and new industries. Redevelopment fits really well. I kind of mentioned earlier, kind of dovetailing this into our opportunity zone, which is a tax break area, and includes most of the downtown. Certainly we'd have to go through this process to decide what area we would do. It would probably be smaller than the whole city that we would create this creative district, but we can add on some more synergy there. Increase tourism, and one of the things we talked about is the sculpture park going forward, and this fits right in with that. We can promote the sculpture park as part of this creative district program. And then increase the community livability is always important. And then kind of this is the steps that they propose, but I'm going to kind of jump into a step before we get here. But if we wanted to move forward, we're going to gather, and so there's going to be a lot of community planning. There's going to be some work in doing the application process and then becoming a district, and and then moving ahead with continuing to do like the Main Street is and promote the creative economy in a long-term basis and creating synergy. And you can put up, there's even signs that you could put up that you're a creative district entering, and there's a lot of promotional things that you can do there. And then supporting that, this is really would be seen as supporting the arts community too, by participating in this. This district would provide resources and guidance, networking opportunities, and then technical assistance. And so there's another sample there of Colorado, of the success of arts districts or creative districts, and 5% annual increase in employment and 6% increase in revenue. So this is kind of a marriage with economic development and arts. This is the way I look at it, because when I saw this, I'm not as excited as some people are on arts, but really when I saw the numbers and the issues on how you're doing this on economic development, I really saw this as a really positive marriage with economic development. So one of my personal steps was taking a more active role in economic development, and I saw this as a tool that we can address a segment of the economy and address economic development. So backing up a little bit from the steps here, when we started looking at this and meeting with the representative of the state that networks with you in creating the arts district, you really have to have a part-time person to really do it. There's a saying that if you don't have anybody assigned to do it, it doesn't get done. And then Lisa kind of reminded me that we've got a lot on our plate to take it on, so really we need to designate somebody. And talking to that, it's $15,000 to $20,000 in a part-time person, 15 hours to 20 hours a month. I would hire the person, and then we turn around and have that person go through the process of applying, the application process, doing the community outreach, determining what the area is. So one of the positive things is we do have a budget in the Creative Arts Fund, and they've allocated, recommended that the council allocated $15,000. And then in the mayor and I have an economic development account of $30,000. I'm using some of it to promote the opportunity zone, but if we needed additional funding, we would kick in up to $5,000, and that would get to the $20,000 that she's between $15,000 and $20,000 that they're really looking at to have that. Some people are trying to do it on the volunteer issue, but volunteers kind of come and go. One of the things, if you have a budget for somebody, that person leaves, guess what? You hire somebody else to fill in and pick up and keep it going. I think Langley's trying to do it on the volunteer, but they're going to meet some resistance on that. I'm talking to the representative on the state, and they're following a lot of the example of Colorado that's been doing this, and really just having the paid person and having the budget is really the way to go in really making this happen. So,
could I say?
Yeah, go right ahead.
It might seem a little bit premature, but we've met with Annette Roth, and she's very excited about the program. Just about every city in Washington wants this designation, and they're scrambling. And very few cities have the Arts Commission funding that we do. Anacortes has nothing. Langley has nothing. They don't contribute anything to their arts commissions. It's basically begging for art. Annette Roth, right now, everybody's trying to do it with volunteers. She can almost guide us through the process and guide our employee through the process, and we can seamlessly achieve this. And while it does feel premature, there are a lot of things that are art related that are going on in the community that some of you may not know about. Like New Leaf has purchased the 2 buildings across from Fraser's, and they are going to turn that into an art resource center and a gallery and an outdoor sculpture park also. So that's going to be going on. We're really trying to push for a maker's market, a maker space where people can go work on wood or paint or commune with looms. And there's models like it in Bainbridge, on Bainbridge Island, called the Barn. Linden has the Jansen there's just a lot of things that would benefit us in the long run if we seize this opportunity now. And we do have the funds in the Arts Commission account that could create an expedited designation. And then with that and the new sculpture park and all the other things that are going on in the community, it would grow evenly and maybe even faster than waiting for art to come and then claim it, then just pave the way for the art. And there's a lot of community backlash about art and is art important, but if you really look around the numbers, I think there was something I saw that last year art exceeded transportation and agriculture in the United States as a revenue enhancer. So it's just, it would be exciting to prove to the rest of the communities on this island that we can get this and make it happen. And I've sat in on the meetings in Langley, and I've sat in on the meetings in Anacortes, and everybody wants it, they just don't have the way to do it.
Yeah, and this commission has about has a balance that we subtracted. You do have in your packet here some cash analysis, so we're down to 62,000 in the cash balance, but it generates about $50,000 in revenue that we steer towards the Creative Arts Fund. So there is the budget there to handle the $15,000. So we're lucky that we already have that and a fit in. And I know we looked at economic development. This is a little bit of a variation of it, but this is economic development and promoting this creative district. A lot of help with the state, a lot of synergy there that we can do in really making it and getting on the map early on as a creative district.
One of the things too in the community, when we're talking about the sculpture park, which is going to be very significant, there are a lot of people that want to contribute, and we haven't even reached out because we don't have dry ink on a lease. And the minute we have that, I'm going to pull the floodgate and things are going to start happening. But we do have people in the community that want to donate and sponsor and give us money to make these things happen in the community. So when we look at what we have, it's not depleting an account, it's beginning the growing of an account. We just haven't had anything to lay out yet.
So the Art Commission, you've already mentioned, has in excess of $60,000.
They currently have a unused fund balance of $62,400, and then they generate $50,000 a year.
I'm going to assume that the Art Commission is in favor of this idea.
Yeah, they voted to recommend that the council designate $15,000 before when we would hire a executive director. So I would come back to council, ask for $15,000 to spend from the Creative Arts Fund.
Okay.
And then we would move forward with, we'd probably do it as an independent contractor, do a PSA. Okay. Professional service agreement with an individual or an organization to promote this. And then I mentioned they're kind of having the extra $5,000 there available that the mayor and I can approve within our line item of that $30,000 that we have if needed. So together we're putting up to $20,000 into this creative arts district, and synergy, and having a part-time person doing about 15 to 20 hours a month promoting creative arts, just kind of like we have a full-time director for the Main Street program.
And they'll potentially define the district, come back, and it might not be the entire city. I think I heard could be part of the city and define the boundaries.
Yeah, I kind of have something in mind. I have the opportunity zone in the downtown, but it really needs to go through a workshop, and there's a process, and they walk you all through the community. There's an application in here, so it's all prefabbed, and so it's somebody just turning around and getting trained by the state and going through the application process and going through the outreach and inviting a lot of artists and a lot of people interested in it and doing a kind of a brainstorming issue. So I kind of have my concept, but I got to realize that really it needs to kind of go out and be a consensus on what we want to do. You don't want the whole city, because we kind of want to put it into a district, but it can be much more larger than the downtown, and that's the way I think Teresa and I kind of envision. We certainly would want the sculpture park in there. We would want Windjammer in there, areas that had park, that had emphasis on arts. We would want that in that district, but that's something we'll evaluate. We'll get the executive director on board and let that person kind of take us through the application process as part of their duties and get us certified.
I'm not sure if I'm right, but I believe Annette led us to believe that if we moved forward with something like this and we had somebody designated to follow the process and work with her, it seemed like we could have the designation in as little as 6 months. It wasn't a long, drawn-out process. It was just she was going to kind of hold our hand and baby step us through the process.
When do you plan on coming back to council to ask?
At the next council meeting,
Okay.
probably.
That's
If I can
June
get it on-
4th?
The June 4th one, if I can get it on there. And basically what it will be is to ask for the allocation of $15,000 for a PSA for a creative arts executive director. That would be the line item.
Okay.
And then we would move forward.
Questions? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. Does she have recommended on the background you're looking for even though it's a part-time job, you still want someone who knows what they're doing? So requirements of a background, history on what we're looking for someone to be able to handle this?
Yes.
On their resume, okay?
Yeah.
I would like to see that
Yeah.
or some points
Yeah.
of that meeting before approving the money.
It's typically done 3 different ways. Sometimes the Main Street supplements it. Sometimes if we have an economic development person that's full-time in the city or part-time in the city, that person has been doing it. And sometimes the chamber does it. Or we can go the 4th way, which we may do, is we just hire a consultant, somebody who's as an independent contractor to do it too. So those are kind of the 4 ways that it breaks down. The volunteerism is kind of the one that Langley's trying to do, and they certainly they're welcome to try to do it, but they're just not as, without having the designated funding there, it's just harder to do that, and it's harder for volunteers to commit with a long-term relationship. And they know from Colorado that's been doing this for some time, and talking with her, it just has fizzled out. The areas that had the volunteer without the designated funding, we've got I think it'll fit into the budget here for the Arts Creative District, or Creative Arts Fund. Use the new name here. Creative Arts Fund has the funding for it, and I think it's a good allocation of it. And I think kind of partnering that with some of the economic development money we have in the general fund, we just get some good mileage here and really promote the creative economy and also do some economic development at the same time. So I really think it's a win-win.
I do too. I just want to be sure we know exactly targeting what type of person and what qualifications they need to have. It's a good resource, and I think with New Leaf, we may be able to partner with them on their vision on how they want to expand what they're doing.
That would be
so
maybe.
I just want to be sure we have set qualifications that we're looking for, and that we're just not hiring a person that sounds like they have a good idea. I mean, $20,000 is still $20,000, and we're responsible for accounting for that money.
There's a definite skill set this person needs, and it's a lot of computer
That's all I'm
work.
asking. I would like to see that.
But unfortunately, there's a lot of help we're getting from the person at the state level.
More
So
help than you want.
yeah, she's very helpful on helping us through this process, and wants us to be successful, definitely.
Councilor Larson?
Thank you, Mayor. It sounds like this has got a lot going for it. We've got money designated you have money designated in this fund. We've just granted some broader scope to utilizing that money. It sounds like by bringing this person on board and developing this district might actually pay a dividend that will help us become self-sustaining. So from everything that I've heard, I would say I would support moving forward and looking at making this, seeing what it takes to make this a reality.
I don't believe it's an annual job. I think we're just hiring this
Oh,
person.
it is annual. They'll keep on.
So they'll continue.
$15,000 a year. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll set it up. Yeah.
Councilor Wiesner?
Thank you, Mayor. Therese, thank you so much for what you've been doing for the art community, and it shows. It shows in the fact that we've committed looks to me like $101,179 to art out of the fund that the money was just sitting there over the last couple of years. The concern I have, and I guess I'm just going to put it out there as a concern, because I don't want to be, I don't want to see this momentum that you've got going stop, right? But I also want to point out that the reason we had $101,000, of course, to be able to spend on art was the fact that this fund had built up, and there was money built up in this fund because we have $52,000 a year coming into this fund. I'm concerned, I guess, that $15,000, if it is an annual, or a long-term position, $15,000 annually, that's a third of the commission's budget. That's a third of the money that you would have to spend on projects, and I'm concerned that you guys don't hamstring yourself, and find yourself with all sorts of great projects and all sorts of great things you can do, but no money to do it with. I'll let you address that.
The vision hasn't even opened, and I believe that we're going to have so many people in the community that are interested in participating in growing our art footprint, that this amount of money isn't the only money we're going to be spending on art. So we're going to refill our coffers. When you're saying we're agreeing to spend money on the art, on the installation of the art, on the forming of the park, all that money that we're going to spend is going to be given back to us from the community. I have promises. I haven't been able to even sit in a chamber meeting to ask for sponsors because we're just holding this back, and most people don't even know what's coming, and it's going to be big. It's going to be 40 or so large scale sculptures on Highway 20 with signage and picnic tables and a destination to go have a picnic, and that's just the beginning of what we're doing. Where Paula's mural's getting nothing but excitement, and we have permission from every building owner on Pioneer and in town to paint their walls, and we can do that too. I mean, we're just on the verge of just kind of transforming what looks like a struggling little area into something that maybe when you walk by, you say, I want to rent that empty building. There's like 11 empty places on Pioneer Way right now. And I just think I've got a bunch of stuff I could show you about revitalization, but art is the way to do it, the quick way. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with Waterford, Ireland, but they used to have the Crystal Factory, and they don't. And they went into this deep, dark despair of poverty, and now they have a world-class mural event every year in August where people are coming from all over the world to watch people from all over the world paint their crumbling walls. And it's like a huge festival.
Well, and hopefully you understand my concern. I want to make sure that you guys have the revenue to continue forward, to keep this momentum up, to continue doing the great things you're doing. And so that's just my one caution, right? I mean, we want to make sure that we continue to be able to fund you to continue to do this. And so I'm not saying I'm dead set against this. That's where my caution is, right? In making sure that we provide the proper funding to keep this thing, keep moving forward through the fund we've got out there.
Yeah, and you got a good point. That's why I was, instead of looking at 20, I looked at 15, because that's kind of, I think we could still afford that, still keep some momentum with our arts that we purchase, and yet move ahead with this program here. So I think it's a win.
So we've got a couple more questions, we're getting low on time here. So Councilor Wassman.
I'll go quick. So to address that too, just pure funding wise and money wise year over year for you, I'm assuming that there are other points to forming this
district
committee, this district, and that maybe it could open up. Are there grants? I mean, I know with Main Street, it sort of opens up other revenue sources for that organization. I'm assuming that that's part of what creating this is for.
There's a little bit of grants right now if you get on the early end. And then there's certainly in networking for other grants related to economic development is opening. I'm not going to sell it because grants kind of come and go, but certainly we'll look for opportunities.
Councilor Servatius.
Quick comment, thank you, Therese. Your volunteer, your commitment, your enthusiasm, your passion is awesome. I support this. I just had a quick question. Of the 30,000, can you give us a breakdown of what we've committed to so far of that? I know we've got a fiber, I think we make some of the Portico bill, you mentioned the opportunity zone. What have we committed so far?
You're talking, the 30,000?
Economic development.
We committed about 5,000 for the opportunity zone and 5,000 for the matching funds for the Coopville Port Authority grant.
Okay.
So I've committed
Total
about
of 10.
10,000 already. This will be another, so to commit about half. So I still have 15,000 to.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Exciting. Okay? Mr. Oborn,
All right, let's
you
wrap
might,
it
you
up.
might want to pass that out, and you probably don't have a hard copy, huh?
No, they have it in their packet.
Okay, good, okay, good.
Yeah.
My iPad just died, so.
Yeah.
70
All right.
pages.
Sometimes he brings it up, but I didn't have him bring it up today, so sorry about that. I'll just try to go real fast. One of the things you just asked about, the status of the $350,000 Harbor Heights land acquisition, that was in the budget. So that was my first line item there. Along with that funding, and appreciate the lobbying effort, and it's nice to see some results. The mayor and I went down to Olympia twice to advocate for this $350,000. So it's a really good event. We also got some funding, $400,000 for the marina and $68,000 for a marina restoration feasibility. So we'll have some more information on these other grants coming, but we can move ahead. And certainly, we're talking about over $1.1 million for the acquisition of that property, and so we'll look for other grant funding opportunities too. And just met with Congressman Larson's office this week, and kind of gave us some tips on other funding that we can look at for that
Councilor
facility.
Sebelius.
Yeah, so.
Hey, Blaine, Councilor
Can we
Sebelius
say
got a question.
thank you if we had any legislators
Yeah.
that were specifically involved in helping us with that? Please, Mayor, from your office, send them a thank you note, or from the city administrator, because that's a big deal. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a big help on all three of our District 10 representatives, so.
That's correct.
We're all.
Senator and both the representatives, so, yes.
Both helped in that, in getting the funding there, so that's real exciting. Arts Commission, I don't think we need to go that. Main Street, they had their cleanup day on May 18th, and I think the mayor and I were able to both help. We crossed paths, we didn't see each other, but he was at one end, I was at the other end there, so good projects there. The Plan Commission is working through, there was some recommendations of downtown design guideline changes by the Main Street, and it's going through the Plan Commission process there. Steve mentioned already in there that on June 27th, the Historic Preservation Commission has the local designation, so they can designate a local area as a historic area, and then it allows that building to be able to access there's some historic tax credits that they can take advantage by doing that local designation. So there's going to be some training for the commission on June 27th, and I think they have some openings on that commission too that we're looking to fill. So, and then I was able to. I'm also continue to participate strongly in the design committee, and then when the Economic Vitality Committee gets going, I'll be committed to doing that too, participating actively in the Main Street program. On the community support, we went ahead and completed the PSA for the Would Be Homeless Coalition of $9,000. They already given us an invoice, so you'll see that on the invoice coming up. And certainly if they wanted to look at a larger amount, that's something we would look at in the budget process in the future.
On that.
Yes.
What does that $9,000 mean in terms of sheltering people from Oak Harbor?
Well, the whole idea is that, and they're providing service for it, and if we, it helps us with the Boise case, because if we contribute towards that, we can show that if we kick somebody out of our park, we have an alternative location that we support with that has some availability. And that's one of the cases, and it probably gets a little bit more intense than that. I'm just really talking on a level, but there's certainly, and that's the way we justify it. And Nikki could help me if I a little bit more better. Am I okay? Yeah. Okay.
It's not necessarily an annual thing, and in fact, I think this year we decided that it was more important to be able to have an opportunity for somebody to have a bed than potentially to have them sleeping in our public places.
What if there isn't a bed available through this program? What happens then?
Then they technically can sleep in our public places.
They technically can?
Well, yes, or legally can.
In the park?
No.
Somewhere in the city, we can, yeah, we just had a nice workshop on that today, so.
Yes, we did.
On public property, potentially. We can talk about this offline.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be better, probably.
Yeah, so there is some benefit of that, and we looked at the line item. I think in 2017, the city gave them 5,000, and 9,000 kind of fit in here, so that's the reason why. And that line item seemed to fit. So moving on, one of the things I'm participating with as a city administrator is the Chamber's Legislative Affairs Committee. So really good opportunity to network and be kind of part of some of their items, and a lot really is lined with us. Workforce housing was their number one issue, and so something I'll kind of touch on a little bit later here on some of the things we're focusing on. And certainly we had the trespassing workshop that they have. Moving on to economic development, the Opportunity Zone, I've been talking about this. We almost got the date in middle of July set, so we'll send out information on that. I believe it's going to be in the second week of July. We'll have an outreach on opportunity zones to take advantage of this tax break program for revitalization of our depressed area in the city. It's the only area in opportunity zone in Island County that was designated. So we'll certainly work on promoting that in a partnership with the EDCIC in doing that. So they're providing a lot of help in doing that. Then moving on to we mentioned the county economic development funding applications, and we have a presentation on Tuesday, May 28th. In consultation with the mayor, we may modify the marina grant since we got that $400,000 and ask for some additional funding to become a full service marina. There'll be more information coming on that. Broadband, some really active areas in that. We're partnering with the Coopville Port Authority that's going to do a broadband feasibility study, and just heard some more information on that on the Council of Governments. So we contributed, I had a typo there, it's 5,000 is what we contributed in there. And then also wet fiber is something that really exciting that Anacortes is working on, and having some European technology. So a gentleman from the United Kingdom came out, that was out already working with Anacortes on installation and training them on using their equipment, and he gave a nice presentation to staff. And one of the things I really was interesting is by putting this fiber in there, not only does it do the communication, but it has a lot of benefits of leak communication and things that you could do in your water system. So that's something that we're going to continue to evaluate and look forward to. And by being connected with Anacortes by water, and they're going to come all the way to the bridge, and so certainly we can come, and it cuts the cost of, by going in the water lines, lowers it by a third to 50% by going to the water lines instead of having to dig. So a lot of benefit there, and that's the reason why they were looking at it, probably looking at the backbone model or some adaptation of that. So there'll be more information coming on that, but it's real exciting on the economic development. One of the areas I really wanted to focus on, and I think that it's already kind of an initiative before I got here, continue to do that. So moving on, the Clean Water Facility Report, we're kind of going to the abridged version, so it's in your packet. you have any questions here, Kathy will be happy to answer anything you have on that. We'll just, rather than doing the presentation, it's just, like we mentioned, it's included in my packet here as an attachment. So developmental services, I think the key area here is a lot happening. I think this says it all in the statement. We have 7 resident projects under review, currently representing approximately 428 new units. So we have a lot on the drawing board, and hopefully we can get those off the drawing board and into construction. So we'll continue to work on those projects here. So just as an FYI, we did receive another annexation request for 5.32 acres on Crosby Avenue and Airline, and that'll work its way through you. But by me doing this report, I can kind of give you a heads up on things that are coming. Speaking of heads up, in our June meeting, I think when we talked about the goals for the Plan Commission, we had the JPA and the UGA, so Steve and I had met with some county representatives and got a plan for expanding our JPA and joint planning area with the county. So we're going to bring that back to you, some proposals that we have of greatly expanding the JPA at the June workshop. Moving on to fire department, the chief went out, inspected the ladder truck, all was good. They put it on a truck and hauled it out here, and so we've got a ladder truck that'll last another 10 to 15 years. So it ended up being under $200,000. We had a little bit of gamble with that thing, but it was the right thing to do, and just really a good thing to do. So a lot cheaper than $1.5 million of buying a new ladder truck. So you got anything else to add, Chief?
I'm just happy it's home.
Okay. Yeah, so good results there. So HR continues to work on the Public Works and Marina. We were talking about having another session afterwards, but since somebody's out, we'll postpone that to another time, but we'll continue to meet with you and discuss to get those contracts finalized. In our lower parking lot here, we just did a safety improvement there, and you got a bump here, so you got to slow down when you come through the parking lot. That was really a staff, Steve can see out his window, and I think Nick, you can see people with our one-ways here, a lot of people cut through, and they'd come through at 25 miles an hour to our parking lot. So staff put a little speed bump in there to slow that down, so that's just a really good thing. And then we're also going to look at rekeying. There's a lot of keys out there that never came back, and so that's one of the things we're looking at. And then the summer picnic, June 25th, I put this on your yesterday's notice. Moving on, public safety work group continues. A lot of good initiatives. I think you saw some already coming forward there. And then the chief did a good job at accepting the invitation on the Trespass and Safety Chamber meeting and doing some outreach and telling people what we're doing. The wagon wheel mobile home, the county's kind of looking at expanding our UGA for us, but as we can tell from our meetings that they're getting water there, so they're not hauling the water anymore. So we'll continue to work on that issue and coordinating with them.
Question on
Yes,
that.
go ahead.
On the county's preliminary proposal to expand the UGA, what happens to the formula of buildable lands that go along with your UGA expansion?
Everything says zero effect.
It
So they're
explain-
doing it on, and they're saying there's no growth that's gonna happen there. They're just doing it purely for the utility, so it's not gonna affect our buildable lands. is
So
their
the
initial-
UGA will involve only the property of the wagon wheel?
Only that one
And-
property, there's
And not affiliated, associated,
Nothing.
connected vacant land?
nothing else. So, and they're initiating, we do have the only one time a year, but since they're doing it on an emergency basis, they're saying that they're the ones initiating it, not at our request. So we'll continue to have some more meetings. It was on their plan commission. We didn't get much of a notice of it being on their plan commission, but we'll certainly reach out to them. We've already started some.
Yeah, we have others in
So
there.
let's say it goes into the UGA, then can they apply for annexation because there'll be an enclave?
They can. Oh, no, it's contiguous to
Is
the
it
city.
contiguous with
It's
the city?
contiguous to the city. The problem is, is
Without
the
taking
direct
other
route is
land.
going out to UGA. The preferred route is go through the property we're trying to purchase for the
Okay.
regional park and go that route. So, but we have another trailer park that's outside that's looked at us and never was able to overcome the financial issues. So there's no guarantee
Yeah.
that they'll hook it up, and then they'll have to apply and go through the process like other property had, and look at the cost of paying our system development fees and a lot of those
Water and
issues.
sewer then?
Yeah.
That's
they-
probably something we should discuss further, you know,
Okay.
I mean, rather than here right now.
Okay.
A lot of details will go into
Yeah,
that.
I'm trying to do on the precursor level,
Okay.
not to get too far
Okay.
in it, but
Yep.
certainly if you want to individually talk to me
understand.
more, I'd be happy to do that. So with that, I'll take any questions anybody has.
I just gave you my questions.
Okay. All right.
So you're gonna do this every workshop and then try to keep it updated even in between. I mean, the interesting part of this is, like you say, the police department already last night at council meeting accomplished some of this.
Oh, yeah, I write this.
This is a moving target, obviously.
I
Yeah,
wrote this Thursday last week, so it's already,
sure.
it's obsolete by the time I get to do my presentation, but that gives you an opportunity to see it way in advance by
Yeah.
putting it in
And you
the
know what
packet.
we're working on, we have some things in there, like he mentioned, the marina, which is obviously some important issues with that going on that we're working pretty hard on right now. to Get some leases finalized, some other agreements hopefully made, so. Mayor Pro Tem.
On the marina, isn't June the date where
It
you're
is.
supposed to? Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
got it, thank you.
We are all over that, we hope. We're pretty sure we are. Anyway, any other questions, or we're gonna try to keep you more updated with this kind of thing and keep it more up to date. So, okay, any other discussion on anything? Thanks for your patience. We went a little beyond our time, so I guess we can do that in workshops, but with, I think, no other business, we're adjourned. Thank you.